Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Set 11 Abysscraft review. I am super hyped for this set. There are so many characters in this set that are just so cool, and their effects are awesome, and I just seriously can't get into it. I'm probably going to get more into explaining the cards in this more than usual, so buckle up, because I've got a few, extra slides for, at least for one card in particular. But like usual, first we will go over the card rating before we actually get to the cards. And actually, this doesn't seem very appropriate for the set. Hold on one second. I'm gonna let me do something real quick. There we go. With a new set and a Western theme, we kind of need a new set and a Western theme wallpaper. So now let's get into the card rating here. It hasn't changed much, if at all, from the old ones. Mainly, it goes from 5 to 0, 5 being is a meta-defining or meta-warping card, and it's absolutely needed for its respective deck. 4 is it's a solid, strong card, and definitely needed for its deck still. 3 is just an average strength card, but, still needed, just not super crazy. 2 is good, but it may be kind of not as great, and other options, even options that are outside of the archetype, might be preferred over it. 1 is it rarely sees play, and it might be pretty niche in its application. And 0 is it's effectively a garbage card, or it's a card that might be not bad, but there's just not enough other cards to support its effects well. First up is the greatest card in the set, Ice Shillandrig Gilded Autocrat, although I do kind of like his Japanese name, which is Ice, well, technically it's Chaos Ruler Ice Shillandrig, pretty good name, but still, at least in English, it's translated Ice Shillandrig Gilded Autocrat. He's a 5-cost, 5/5, Wasteland Departed Demon follower that has the effects of when he becomes engaged, each opponent discards a card, and on fanfare, if you do not have a Magitrain token on your field, you can summon the Magitrain token, and he evolves for 1 into a 6/6, and he still retains when he becomes engaged, your opponent discards a card effect, and then it says during your turn, when a player discards a card, you select an enemy follower on the field and engage it, which might be a little weird, but we'll get to why. And then his on-evolve effect is you discard a card, and you can select 2 followers in your cemetery and add them to your hand. And a friendly reminder about the on-evolve effect, the discard a card option, or the discard a card effect, is a cost, and the cost is optional, so you don't need to discard a card if your hand is pretty good, but you still just want to evolve him. Moving over to the Magitrain token, it's a 5-cost 4/5 amulet. So normally amulets don't have attack and defense, and you can see that they are orange, which there is a reason for that. So by default, it does not have the 4/5 stats, but we'll get into that in a second. It has an ability of you can act, pay 1 play point, engage any number of followers with a total cost of at least 5 on your field, and you maneuver the card. And when you maneuver the card, effectively what's happening is you're kind of saying the card or cards you're tapping up to 5 are basically riding the train and controlling the train. And so when you maneuver the card, it does gain the 4/5 stats, and it gains rush. And it has on strike, you select an engaged enemy follower on the field, destroy it, and give your leader 2 defense. So there's a lot of direct, easy synergy with Ice. Between Ice being a 5-cost follower, so you literally need to engage him to maneuver the train. The fact that when you turn Ice sideways, the opponent has to discard a card, and when the opponent discards a card, an enemy follower on the field gets engaged. It fits perfectly with Magitrain's effect of just auto-destroying an engaged enemy follower, and it synergizes all perfectly well with each other. So a lot of effects, but they work well. The one thing that they don't write on the cards is the maneuver is only for the turn. So what happens is if the Magitrain has some damage taken at the end of the turn, it loses all its stats. So it loses the attack and defense, which also includes any damage. So basically during your turn, as long as you don't run it into something that does 5 damage back to the magic train, it will usually survive unless your opponent has some quick effects that, you know, could potentially destroy it, like a couple of surefire bullets, for example, or something like that. But the magic train is basically really hard to get rid of, because if there is a follower on the field that would kill it, you can just use the magic train's effect to probably tap the big follower sideways and just destroy it with the magic train effect, so you don't have to actually fight it. And even then, even if it's the only follower on the field, you can attack it with the magic train and the effect will go off, killing it first before the battle even happens. So the magic train is a very sticky thing that is tough to deal with, and there's not a lot of amulet destruction in the game right now. Also, keep in mind that the turn the magic train is summoned, it does have rush, but not storm or summoning sickness. And so after the turn is played, every subsequent turn, it doesn't have rush, but it doesn't have any summoning sickness either. So every turn after the first turn, it could just run into the opponent, and then just in the meantime, while dealing 4 damage to the opponent, you know, still destroying an engaged enemy follower and healing 2. So I gave this card a 5 because the card just literally runs in almost every main deck with good support at the moment, to the point that any meta deck is basically running ice. If you're not running ice, it's just not as good of a deck. And he's flexible enough to fit in so many things, as you can see on the right side here. I have Wasteland, Departed, Vampires, 2 cost, Control, and Nephthys. All of these have, you know, high cost followers that ice can fit in, and the magic train can fit in. Ice can recur any bunch of, you know, really strong followers from any of these archetypes. And we'll go into a few synergies here before I jump into the next cards. But and Ice can even grab himself with his on-evolve effect, where you select 2 followers. So if you already have an Ice in the cemetery and you evolve Ice on the field, you can discard a card and grab another copy of Ice. So a lot of decks that run Ice just run them at 3 ofs, because it's just consistently easy to just go through all evos in a game. Along with that, a couple other little quick things here, but I'll touch on them in a minute in the different archetypes. Is, you know, you can grab Tartarus the Tormentor with Ice. So then it's another, you know, pay 1 to check top 2 for a Departed card, which Ice is a Departed card. So wow, by God, you know, you can get another copy of him by checking the top 2 cards of your deck. And there's a lot of really good 5 cost followers in the game at the moment, like I mentioned here with Zelganea, Kawi, and Milteo. I'll mention a few more in a little bit, but also keep in mind the follower that you need to engage, it doesn't have to be an Abysscraft follower. So things like Zelganea work, because, you know, he's a 5 cost as well. So within the Departed archetype, obviously I already mentioned Tartarus the Tormentor, so you can re-grab him. And then you have Death's Breath, which, yes, Ice is a 5 cost, not a 6 cost. So, you know, you're not really getting, I guess, the most bang for your buck, because, you know, usually with Death's Breath, you want to try to get like an 8 play point follower, or, you know, 7, 6 at the very least, ideally. But Ice is so universally good, and if you know, worst case, if you milled one or something by accident, you know, Death Breathing it back, it gets ward, you know, you get the train, you can pay 1 and tap, you know, Ice to maneuver the train, and now that Ice is engaged as well, his ward is triggered. So, you know, while Death's Breath might not be like ideal, it's certainly not like a bad thing. And then same thing with Grave Desecration. You grab a Departed follower from Cemetery, and Ice is Departed. I don't know why he's Departed. It's almost kind of stupid that he's Departed, but I mean, I'm not complaining. Just a very weird, you know, archetype to give him. The Wasteland I totally get, and the Demon I totally get. That's fine, but I don't know if it's like a lore reason that he's Departed. If anyone knows, by all means, let me know, because I didn't play like the original Shadowverse game to know his lore or anything. But yeah, there's a lot of really good ways to grab him. Along with, obviously, like I already mentioned, like he can just grab himself from the Cemetery. Within Departed, there's probably going to be one very common pattern you'll experience if you're playing Ice, is just grabbing back Tartarus and Demon Lord Ektar, because, you know, you obviously Demon Lord Ektar is really strong, so you can play him next turn, but then Tartarus, also all the things I already mentioned as far as, you know, recurring with the 1 play point to put them in the EX area and check top 2 to grab a Departed, and just grabbing Demon Lord Ektar, playing Demon Lord Ektar. You could engage Demon Lord Ektar to give the magic train that Ice would have already had on the board, you know. maneuver. Tartarus the Tormentor is certainly big enough that, you could engage him to maneuver the Magic Train. So there's just a lot of flexible options. And, if you already have the Magic Train on the board and you play Tartarus, Evo Tartarus, get Demon Lord Ektar, you get 2 other followers, which, by the way, this set has a lot of crazy good, not a lot, but they do have certainly crazy good departed followers. And certainly one of them I'll get to, Demon Lord Ektar is a perfect fit for. So, between the Magic Train, Tartarus, Demon Lord, and then the 2 followers you summon, that's 5. That's a full board right there. And I mean, the Magic Train, like I said before, if the Magic Train was on the board, last turn, then it doesn't have summoning sickness or anything, and you could just go for face with it. It can even get the +1/+1 or +3/+3 buff from Ektar, because if you are playing Tartarus first to res back Ektar, you play Tartarus, and before you evolve him, you just engage him to maneuver the Magic Train. So now the Magic Train actually has stats, and then you evolve Tartarus to summon Ektar. Ektar summons, the 2 followers and gives the +1/+1 or +3/+3 to everything, and then the Magic Train can just punch for face. So I'm just so excited just to even just play this deck. Looking into bats now, I mean, Ice can just recur really good followers like Crimson Rose Queen and Kudlak, or any of the other smaller followers, even Old Blood King. I'm trying to think of anything else, but I mean, basically, if it's a follower, you can grab it with Ice. And you make enough followers that, even if you have to engage like a bat or something, it's not a big deal. Heck, I mean, along with the obvious, like engaging Crimson Rose Queen or Kudlak to, maneuver the Magic Train, you still have Old Blood King that, it's a 4 cost, but it summons 2 force bats. So even if you don't want to evolve Old Blood King, you just play him, tap him, and one of the bats you play, and that still maneuvers the Magic Train, because that's 5, a total cost of 5 between the 2 followers. Heck, even within 2 costs, Alter Plane Arbiter is a 5 cost, so, you could always just engage him, board wipe if you need to, and then, worst case, you don't even evolve him, you just play him, mill 5 to do some board wipe, and, engage him to, attack with the Magic Train. I would say I'm a little, from a personal perspective, I am slightly disappointed in the 2 cost archetype this set, because normally, traditionally, 2 cost is more like 6 to 9 non-2 cost cards, and then all the rest of the roughly 30 cards are 2 cost cards. With Ice in the deck, it seems like people have really shrunk down the number of 2 cost cards, and even running the 1 cost spell that Ice synergizes well with, which I'll get to soon. But regardless, the point is it's a 1 cost spell, not a 2 cost spell. So the deck looks weird, and I'm not sure if how much of a gimmick it is that they're cutting so much on the 2 cost cards in the few deck lists I've seen. I mean, I think if memory serves correctly off the top of my head, I think there was like a total of like 18 2 costs in the deck once people started trying to cram Ice in, because they were also not only trying to cram Ice, but his spell that we'll get to, and they were even trying to cram in Zelganea, because you want more 5 costs in the deck to just maneuver the Magic Train. And then lastly is the Nephthys based deck, and you can also kind of throw control in here as well, because a lot of the cards get shared between the 2. Mainly, Kawi gets shared. Trying to think of Zelganea's, is shared as well. Nephthys, Odile, and Milteo are usually more in the Nephthys side of, the kind of deck build. But even the classic controlled base deck with like things like Israfil, that's certainly a big enough follower. Even Azazel, you can engage Azazel after you evolve him and set your opponent's life to 10 to hit them with the Magic Train. So, but the main point here is, at least in the Nephthys base build, there's so many high cost followers, and especially Kawi. Kawi synergizes really well, because I mean, you're going to engage them to get ward anyway, so you're already tapping the guy, so you're just getting more off of Magic Train than than just the ward with Kawi. So, and like I said, Zelganea fits perfect. He's a good follower for a little bit of board control, but also if your opponent's being really aggressive, just an easy way to get 5 life and just stay in the game if you're getting low. I mean, all these cards just work so well. It's kind of crazy. And even Nephthys could summon Ice from, the top 7 cards, and sure, Ice will die, but his fanfare of summoning the Magic Train still goes into play. And then worst case, if all 4 if at the end of the day with Nephthys, all you have is Nephthys and the Magic Train, just engage Nephthys and pay 1 play point to maneuver the Magic Train. So he just he fits in here so well. And then Ice can just grab, Nephthys or Arion, or just literally just so many good followers for whatever the situation calls for. If you're a Necrocharge 20 and your opponent's at like 10 life or less, then just grab Odile and play Odile, next turn, I'm assuming, because, Ice is 5 and then costs 1 to evolve. You need some more defense. Grab Kawi for later. You want to summon more followers from your deck. Grab Milteo. Ice and synergy with so many different decks is just so crazy. Okay, now that I am all done fangirling over Ice, let's go over to the other girl that I am a fan of, and that is Ilgano or Stray. She's a 1-cost 1/1, so super weak, but that's okay. Her fanfare is you select a Wasteland follower that costs 3 or less in your cemetery, and if you have Necrocharge 10, you may put it onto your field, the 3-cost or less follower, the Wasteland follower. And if you do summon that 3-cost or less Wasteland follower, then you banish Ilgano. And her last words is you put her into your EX area and you mill the top card of your deck. So essentially the point is that unless she gets banished, she basically can't die. You will have her in your EX area until you decide to, with Necrocharge 10 or more, decide to finally summon a 3-cost or less follower, and then she gets banished. The way her effects are worded seems slightly counterintuitive. I feel like the last words should be first. I understand from a perspective of fanfares usually happen first before last words, putting fanfares first. But from a logical perspective, they kind of put the cart before the horse with the description. And that's not certainly a roast like to their card design or anything, but just from a, like, when I was initially analyzing this card, you tend to try to think of like, oh, the fanfares do the first thing and then the last words, just do complement the fanfare. But in this case, the fanfare, even though she has a fanfare, it really doesn't trigger until later on. So it's mainly her last words that triggers more frequently, where she, goes back to the EX area. So she's great for, not only things like soul conversion, but, being able to sacrifice her with Arcus Spirited Manager or Wardrobe Raider to, get more benefits for a, first off, a 1-cost follower, but second off, you're never losing her. She's essentially like going back into your EX area to be used in the, in the future. So, like I said here, I kind of ranked her rank 4. She's not like obviously stat wise the strongest, she's only a 1-cost 1/1, but at least for the Wasteland archetype, she's kind of needed because a lot of the other good followers are 3-cost or less Wasteland followers. So she's kind of meant to be like this bodied representation of like the bigger followers. Until later you don't get to summon them, but she's just kind of like the potential, of them coming back from the cemetery. All right, we're shifting away from the Wasteland archetype right now over to a little bit of Sanguine. We have Hazan, Demon Blade Knight. He's a 3-cost 1/2 demon that his base evolve costs 3. However, if Sanguine's active for you, his evolve only costs 1, and he has Assail, Bane, and Drain. And on evolve, he becomes a 1/6, so he gains 4 defense, which is pretty crazy, but it makes sense with everything else, because he still retains the Assail, Bane, and Drain, but he also gains Rush, even though it's not sad because he evolved. And on strike, you deal 2 damage to each enemy leader and refresh the card, and you can only perform it once per turn, so he essentially has double attack. And he's just a really good card to crash into. That's why he doesn't need a lot of attack. But, he does certainly need some defense to deal with 2 attacks. And, keep in mind with the Drain, it's going to be only one life. But, if you only paid 1 and he attacks twice, so you heal 2, that's still +1 in, stats. It's really also refreshing just to finally see a good Sanguine follower that has an Evo, because it seems like for a while now, you could actually basically run a Sanguine deck with practically 0 Evolve followers, because all the good followers were just non-Evolved followers. So this is certainly a refreshing change of pace. And also just, he's also good for control because, you can kill two things with just him, along with obviously doing some burn damage. And, as far as Glory Finder goes, I mean, it's 2 damage to each enemy leader. So if you're playing Glory Finders, total of 6 damage, and then, attack twice, so that's 12 damage. And now we're jumping right back into the Wasteland followers. So we got Great Pit Corpse here. He's a 3-cost 3/3 that says once per turn, when a token that costs 1 leaves your field, you put a copy of the same token card onto your field. And he has a fanfare of you bury another card, and you can select an enemy follower on the field and deal 4 damage. I did also want to throw in the Bullet Bike and Dutiful Steed tokens here. There is one more token, but as far as I could tell, looking at the cards, the card is called Arcane Personnel Carrier, or I might reference it as APC. But that card seems to be more of a Forestcraft / Runecraft card, so I'm not really going to talk much about it, even though it is technically neutral. But for at least Abysscraft, the 2 main are Bullet Bike and Dutiful Steed. Bullet Bike is a 1-cost amulet that says act, bury the card, and you can select a follower on your field and give it rush. But if it's also a Wasteland follower, it gets +1 attack. And then Dutiful Steed is similar, where you can act, bury the Dutiful Steed, just select a follower on the field, and it gets +1/+1 if it's a Wasteland follower. The APC is the same thing, except the follower gets ward and +1 defense. So in my opinion, it's kind of the more mediocre token, because, it's not that big of a deal. But, I'm sure there's going to be good application for it in Forestcraft or Rune. But anyways, the reason why I bring up the Bullet Bike and Dutiful Steed here, even though Great Pit Corpse doesn't mention either, is because he's supposed to synergize well with it, because once per turn, when a token that costs 1 leaves the field, Bullet Bike and Dutiful Steed and APC, for what it's worth, they're all 1-cost tokens. So with Great Pit Corpse's fanfare, you can bury a card, i.e. bury one of the vehicles, and you can deal 4 damage to an enemy follower. And keep in mind, I mean, probably by this point it's obvious, but it's a card you can bury, not just a follower. So, a lot more flexible usage in that regard. Along with, obviously, the Bullet Bike and Dutiful Steed that I mentioned. Ilgano is a good target. She dies. She goes back to the EX area. You mill 1 to deal 4 damage to an enemy follower for just 1 play point. Synergizes well with a lot of 1-cost followers in Abyss. Forest Bats, Gargantuan Ghost, and Ghosts are all 1-cost. And the last bullet there, if you have 2 Great Pit Corpses on the field, and let's say you just have a Bullet Bike on the field, if you have a Bullet Bike on the field and you pay to play Great Pit Corpse, and it's a second Great Pit Corpse, like let's say you already have one on the field, the second Great Pit Corpse will pop the Bullet Bike, and then both Great Pit Corpses trigger to summon 2 Bullet Bikes, because each one triggers. So you can actually gain a little bit of advantage if you have 2 Great Pit Corpses on the field. Now, I will be a slight bearer of my own bad news with all the synergy I mentioned a second ago with all the other kind of, 1-cost tokens that Abysscraft has. Even though, Great Pit Corpse would work great with Force Bats and Ghosts and Gargantuan Ghosts. As I thought about it more, I don't really think, at least for vampires, there's space for Great Pit Corpse, and I don't think sacrificing a bat just to bring a bat back is super, crazy or special. And with Ghosts and Gargantuan Ghosts, I was trying to think of how that would go, and it seems like unless you do some early game 4 play point turn where you play a Ghost from the EX area to the field and then you play Great Pit Corpse. I guess technically what you do is pay 1 to play the Ghost, swing with the Ghost for 1, play the Great Pit Corpse, sack the Ghost, bring the Ghost back, and deal 4 to an enemy follower, and then you could swing again with that 1 Ghost. But even that just seems kind of like a okay play that probably is not the thing you're trying to really aim for. And I didn't really see any deck lists with Ghosts, using Great Pit Corpse. So it's something I'll probably certainly try, because Great Pit Corpse is only a gold, so he's not going to be super expensive or crazy or anything. But it does seem like there is a little bit of missed opportunity in there of doing something cool, but ultimately kind of falling short. Okay, so now I am finally getting to the card that I was referencing earlier with Ice, and it's this card, Dead to Rights. It's a 1-cost spell that says quick. You can select an enemy follower on the field and give it -2/-2, and you may act, banish, Dead to Rights, and a copy of Ice Chilindrey Gilded Autocrat from your cemetery to select an enemy follower on the field and engage it. So starting off, this card is super generic. Even if you don't run Ice Shilling Drig, you can, it's literally a better Angelic Snipe. Instead of 1 cost for 2 damage, it's a -2/-2. So even things like 2 cost followers with, 2 attack and 3 defense, it's kind of going like the Omen of Unkilling route, where it's like, yeah, it's not dead, but, it's a 0/1 that, is basically dead, but just taking up a slot on your opponent's field. But other than that, too, it's just, it's just neutral as heck. Even if you don't run ice, just throw it in whatever deck you need with a little more defense. Up top there, you can see, obviously, like Wasteland and Departed are really good because it's a Departed archetype card. But even like, Vampires, because Vampires will run ice, 2 costs will, run ice, and, same thing with Control. And honestly, probably Nephthys as well, because Nephthys really doesn't have any good 1-cost spells that it runs. Keep in mind that the reason that, you can banish ice and Dead to Rights to engage an enemy follower is just to make it easy to, instantly destroy an enemy follower with the Magic Train, because, of the on-strike effect. For me personally as well, having a card called Dead to Rights just sounds awesome as well. I love this card. It synergizes so well. And the fact that the act with ice is just free, it's just, everything in this card is just so awesome. And the art is great. I'm just fangirling over this set in general. It looks so fun and so cool. All right, finally done with all the fangirling. We'll move on to the Wretch. It's a 3-cost 3/2 follower that can evolve for 1, but you can only activate it if it was put onto the field from the cemetery. It does have Rush, and its last words is to summon a Bullet Bike token, and then you bury the top 2 cards of your deck. On evolve, it becomes a 4/3, and it has Storm, and the on evolve effect is you select an enemy follower on the field and deal 5 damage, which helps, you able to deliver the storm damage to the opponent, and then he still retains the last word effect of summoning a Bullet Bike token and milling 2. I put him as a rank 3 because, this is kind of about middle of the line for effects. And he's still Wasteland and Departed. He necrocharges, the mill 2. With Nephthys, you can get the last word effect of summoning the Bullet Bike, when he's summoned and then destroyed, and then mill 2 more, so helps with the Nicola and Blaster Dark, mill 2. Ultimately, though, I think there's enough other good cards that it probably won't be running Nephthys, but it does kind of have the starting skeleton, I guess, I feel like there's a little bit of a joke there with it being Departed and skeletons, but it feels like there is some potential there, but it's probably a little bit of a missed opportunity, but I want to at least throw it in there for at least food for thought for people who might be trying to update their Nephthys deck. And Control might be a little bit of a stretch as well, but, it is a little bit of control with the Rush, having the Bullet Bike and milling 2 a little bit, and, on evolve, being able to deal 5. The main selling point, keep in mind too, along with Great Pit Corpse, is that Ilgano can spawn the Wretch back, and when you do summon it from the cemetery, it does do the evolve for 1, if you can pay for it, but it does get evolve for 1, and so that's kind of the main way that it's supposed to be summoned. So basically, if you're running Ilgano, the Wretch is going to be there. Moving on to the less slightly powerful cards, we have Golden Mine Necromancer. He's a 5-cost 4/5 that says on fanfare you can select an enemy follower on the field and a Wasteland follower in your cemetery that costs 3 or less, and if you have Necrocharge 10, you deal 4 damage to the first follower, and then you get to summon your 3-cost or less follower from the cemetery. Do keep in mind with this fanfare that you do have to select an enemy follower on the field in order to have a chance to summon your follower, your Wasteland follower from the cemetery. If there's nothing to target, then you can't continue on with the rest. Ultimately, the point of him is to grab the Great Pit Corpse and Wretch, because those are the only 2 3-cost Wasteland followers. I suppose you could also grab Ilgano and then banish Ilgano to grab a 3-cost or less, but, it's kind of redundant at that point going that method. You can also maneuver with the Magic Train token with this, since it is a 5-cost, so that's pretty nice. Seems more of like a late game card, especially since the fanfare doesn't even trigger early game, even on your first turn 5, you're probably not going to have Necrocharge 10. So it's, it's just a 5-cost 4/5 vanilla. So it's very meh. And whenever I've seen this card run in Wasteland decks, it's been more of like a 1 or 2 copy, because you don't want to see it in the early game. You want to see it more late game. Alright, the next card is Wretched Tryst. It's a 4-cost spell that says select 2 Wasteland followers that cost 3 or less in your cemetery, and if you have Necrocharge 10, you summon them. This card honestly feels kind of bad. Just reading it, the fact that you can't even use it turn 4, because I'm certainly sure that you're not going to have Necrocharge 10 by turn 4. That'd be crazy. You'd have to like have the God Hand somehow to be able to pull that off. So that's why I kind of set it as a rank 2, where it's like, yeah, it has its use. It could be used in Wasteland and Departed and Necrocharge, but it feels like it's just a late game card. I mean, especially since you're paying for it to effectively get 6 play points worth of value. And yeah, you know, you might also evolve the Wretch as well, but that still costs 1 more play point. But it's just all the juice for that squeeze just doesn't seem worth it. If it had like some kind of early game effect for 4 play points, maybe, but just the fact that it's just like pure late game just makes it feel kind of mediocre. We're kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel here, but thankfully it does pick up in another couple cards, so just kind of, you know, hitting the kind of the lowest of the lows here. But we're starting with Red Cap. It's a 4-cost 5/4 that evolves for 1, and fanfare, if you have an amulet on your field, it gets Rush and Assail, and its Evo becomes a 6/5, and at the start of your end phase, he refreshes, so it just makes it harder for him to get hit. And he has Follower Strike, he can't take damage for the turn, so, you know, he's kind of just meant to deal damage, decent amount of damage granted, but deal damage to something, not take damage back, and then just be tough to deal with on your opponent's turn since it's, you know, refreshed. You know, a decent option for maybe Glory Finder. But the point of the amulet reference is mainly the Bullet Bike and Dutiful Steed. So, you know, I guess there's a little synergy there, but at the end of the day, it's just kind of a very mediocre card. It's not Departed, so it doesn't fit with Departed archetype. It's not even Wasteland, which is very strange. I mean, it's very clearly like, you can kind of see in the background, the art styles, like the old-timey kind of like Western buildings, and they're just being burned down. So I don't know why it's only a demon, but it's very much the lowest of the low in the set. All right, going from very low with Red Cap to a really good follower. I have it ranked as 4 here, but it's Skeleton Dreamer. He's a 2-cost 2/3 that is also Departed along with Wasteland. So, you know, you kind of already tell where this is going. And he has the ability of when this follower's attack or defense is increased by the ability of a card you control, he gets Storm. So, you know, with a Bullet Bike at the very least, he becomes a 3/3 with Storm. And his last words is you can summon a Bullet Bike and then bury the top card of your deck. So he has a little bit of Necrocharge. That's why I kind of threw the Necrocharge in the deck list there. He's also a 2-cost, so you know, you could certainly in theory play him, although for what it's worth, I don't think I saw a 2-cost deck with him in it. But even outside of the, you know, expected Dutiful Steed / Bullet Bike / APC synergy, he also synergizes perfectly well with Demon Lord Ektar. You know, he's a Departed 2-cost follower. I mean, the Departed doesn't matter with Ektar, but he's a 2-cost follower that, you know, as long as some, you know, something on your field gives him a stat buff, he gets Storm. So Ektar, you know, will either make him a 3/4 or I'm doing the quick math here, 5/6. With Storm, so really strong there. And the 2-cost neutrals, which, you know, we'll get to in the next video, but the 2-cost neutrals are also run in 2-cost decks, which can give this card a stat buff. So, you know, as far as trying to play devil's advocate for 2-cost, you know, there are other cards that would be run in 2-cost that could be used to buff Skeleton Dreamer and give him Storm. I think ultimately, though, the key takeaway, at least for the Departed archetype, is Lesser Mummy is effectively useless, at least unless you're running him in like a purely Necrocharge-based deck. But Skeleton Dreamer is basically Lesser Mummy, but everything is better. He doesn't cost an Evo to get Storm, you know, Necrocharge 10. It doesn't require Necrocharge 10 to get Storm. It just, you know, you just need to buff him. Like I said, he doesn't cost an Evo. Even Lesser Mummy, even if he was evolved and fully buffed, it's still on, you know, roughly on par with Skeleton Dreamer. I mean, Skeleton Dreamer is a 5/6, Lesser Mummy at best is a 6/6, so I guess 1 more damage. But even then, there's not much of a huge hassle of just, you know, sacrificing a Bullet Bike to make him a 6/6, you know, worst case scenario. So Lesser Mummy is, for all intents and purposes, basically dead, and especially since there's just way better followers to evolve, like Nicola, Tartarus, Ice. I'm trying to think of what other follower. Chris Pumpkinhead, or even Wretch, because the deck is probably going to run Ilgano, because Ilgano is also departed. So, you could always resurrect Ilgano with Demon Lord Ektar, if Ilgano was just a victim of, some mill that, she couldn't res back from. You could just bring Ilgano back from the cemetery, sacrifice Ilgano at Necrocharge 10, bring back the Wretch, pay 1 to evolve the Wretch, and, you got Storm right there as well, along with, well, the Wretch wouldn't get the +1/+1 or +3/3 from Ektar, but still, just having Storm on the field is just really strong. All right, we're kind of sinking back down to a rank 1 card. We got Fulminating Berserker. He's a 7-cost 6/6 with Rush, and on strike, you can select an enemy follower on the field and deal it 5. So, rush into one thing, deal 5 to something else. It's more than likely going to be a 2-for-1. So I kind of threw it under the control archetype, category of where it might be played. But for what it's worth, it does have good synergy with Death's Breath. Pretty neutral for any deck in Glory Finder. I say it's a decent target for Ice. I mean, obviously there's better options, but 7-cost 6/6, still pretty good stats overall and stuff. And he can also maneuver the Magic Train worst case. But I think the best case scenario for this deck is either a control, like a budget option for a control deck, or it's going to be running Glory Finder. I don't think there's any real solid archetype in Abysscraft that wants to run him. 15 gears and getting whiplash from it. We're switching back to Sanguine again. It's Grudge Teller. She's a 2-cost 3/2 that says on fanfare, deal 1 damage to each enemy leader, but if Sanguine's already active for you, you deal 3 damage instead to each enemy leader. So, basic good Sanguine synergy there. She essentially has the Aragavi the Berserker half of his effect, where at the end of the turn, you deal 3 damage to an enemy leader. But granted, this is only to leader, not follower or leader like Aragavi does. But that doesn't really matter. Usually with Aragavi, you would just kind of burn your opponent for 3 anyways. He's also 2-cost, like I mentioned, so she can fit in the 2-cost archetype pretty well. And considering, there's a decent amount of 2-cost cards that trigger Sanguine, like Demonium Punk Devil, or, I'm trying to remember, Zealot of Lust. Grudge Teller is probably not too hard to pull off, and you could, totally just play her down. Obviously, assuming you activate Sanguine somehow, you could just play her down with Crimson Rose Queen on the board. Burn your opponent for 2. She comes on the board, burn them for 3 more. So that's just 5 right there. Or, if you want to do a little bit of board wipe with Crimson Rose Queen first to recover a little bit from the Sanguine, and then use her to burn 3 instead. Pretty good flexible options, either kind of extend with Crimson Rose Queen, or just kind of go the middle of the route between heal and extend. And just, of course, the second to last bullet there of obviously it being able to be grabbed back with Alter Plane Arbiter. And since you're grabbing 3 cards with Alter Plane Arbiter, you can kind of do like a hand combo of Grudge Teller, Zealot of Lust, and Kiss of Lust. So you basically, once you get around to Crimson Rose Queen's turn, obviously assuming you have enough play points to do all of it, which is usually pretty frequent. You can usually get like 6 or 7 play points if you do an Alter Plane Arbiter turn before Crimson Rose Queen. You can, play Zealot of Lust, pay 1 at least to burn something for 1, and then play Grudge Teller and Kiss of Lust to recur back your hand, draw a few more cards. So it works pretty well. That being said, though, the deck list I've seen of 2-cost tends to prefer Ice and having very minimal 2-cost cards in general. But if you kind of want to go if you don't want to go the Ice route and you want to go kind of the more traditional, just only cards being non 2-cost is like Crimson Rose Queen and Alter Plane Arbiter, and maybe worst case 1 other card. There's always options for 1 other card to be used. You could Grudge Teller is still certainly a good option. You could even run it in like the Sanguine build I had way back when, where you run Blood Moon and Aragavi the Berserker as the other non 2-cost card. And obviously with it being very Sanguine based, it just would synergize really well. And last, but surprisingly not least, we've already kind of hit the worst cards already, is Spiderweb Array. It's a 2-cost spell that says you can select an enemy follower on the field and engage it, and it can't refresh at the start of its controller's next turn, and you draw a card. So it's effectively you just pay 2 play points to engage, because you draw a card, so you don't even lose advantage with this. So it's pretty crazy. You know, you can grab it back with Ultra Plane Arbiter. If there's only one enemy follower on the field, you can use this to stun it, and then just, you know, with if you have Crimson Rose Queen on the board, just burn your opponent for 2, because, like, you know, it's just going to sit there. You know, you don't have to like deal 2 to the board and heal 2, unless, you know, you want the 2 life, because you might be low on life and you might still be concerned if you're playing against something like Swordcraft that can still storm out a decent amount of damage. But regardless, I mean, it's a 2-cost card, so worst case, you know, you try to stall your opponent a little bit for some damage on turn 2, you know, just make a, you know, 2-cost 3 attack follower, just not be able to restand. It's just a very flexible card at any point in the game. And we finally got to the end. Thanks for watching, everybody. And if you have any questions, you know, feel free to ask down in the comments below. And if you appreciate the analysis and review, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. I appreciate it. And hope you guys enjoy the set as much as I do in a few weeks. Bye.